Breaking development coming in. There's been scuffle at the Delhi court outside. The 1984 riots case was on at the Patiala House Court. You can see these visuals. Majinder Singh Sirsa of the Akali Dal has thrashed one of the convicts of the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. You can see the Delhi police trying to intervene. These are first visuals breaking on Republic TV. You can see the Akali Dal leaders led by Majinder Singh, in fact, attacking one of the convicts of the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. What a painful wait it has been for the victims of the 1984 riots to, in fact, wait for justice. All these years, it's been more than 3 decades now, but there's been no sign of justice. And several Congress leaders also involved in the same. Nalini Sharma, our legal correspondent, breaking this first on Republic TV. Nalini, these visuals are dramatic. Of course, Akali Dal and the Sikh leadership is upset with the case pending for years together. But what exactly happened there?
Well, Aditya, we believe this is Majinder Singh Sirsa's way of trying to seek justice and trying to seek some solace for the lives that were lost in the 1984 riots, because that is the justification that he's given to this entire scuffle that had broken out. But originally, it was just one person who was convicted for the 1984 riots, who was basically going to be sentenced today by the Patiala House Court. And immediately after the hearing, once he was leaving court in the presence of police officials, is when the scuffle broke out between the Sikh leaders as well as the convict of the 1984 riots. There's a lot of agitation amongst these Sikh leaders due to the lack of justice in this entire case, even though it's been over 30 years since the riots actually happened. And this was the way that they've reacted to this entire thing, by attacking the convicts of the 1984 riots, of course being led by Sirsa himself, who then goes on to justify it, saying that it is his way to seek justice for those lives lost that were the lives that were lost in the 1984 riots.
Well, Nalini, it's been close to 35 years now. What a painful wait for some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. It's been a gory nightmare for the Sikh leadership, for the Sikh victims of the 1984 riots. And one can understand totally. Certainly one cannot take law into their own hands. But could you describe what is the status of the case? There have been, several charges against people like Sajjan Kumar, Jagdish Titler and others as well. But here in these visuals, a senior Akali Dal leader from Delhi, an MLA, Majinder Singh Sirsa, is in fact agitated clearly. The Delhi police is trying to control his emotions, trying to move him away. These are dramatic visuals breaking here on Republic TV. Nalini, what's the status of the cases? Did this person get convicted, and for how long?
Yes, in fact, Aditya, he was just convicted yesterday, and his sentencing was supposed to happen today before the Patiala House Court, in which his order for the sentence would have been pronounced. We're still awaiting that order to see for how long he's been convicted, but at the same time, the order for his conviction was pronounced yesterday, and keeping that in mind is why he was produced before the court, so that they can actually give out the sentence for how long he's actually going to remain in jail. But despite this, of course, there is rising agitation amongst all of these Sikh leaders and the Sikh community, especially on this sensitive issue of the 1984 riots. Like you correctly pointed out, there are several senior Congress leaders that are also involved in this entire case. And the reason for this rising agitation mainly is the fact that their cases have been pending and the courts have been delaying it for umpteen years now. They're not satisfied with the justice system in the country. They're not satisfied with how the courts are handling this entire 1984 riots conviction. And even though we saw a conviction just yesterday, this was their way of trying to seek justice for those lives lost, because that is the main issue that they keep stressing upon, that they feel like this has not been done and justice has not been served. So now it seems like they're taking matters into their own hands to try and ensure that there is some sort of respite or relief for the Sikh community that has been raking up this issue for several decades now, trying to get justice for the victims.
Right.
But despite that, from the court, they're seeing very little hope and very little movement on the cases itself.
Nalini, I request you to hold on with us. We'll come back to you, but it's important to play out what Majinder Singh Sirsa actually said after the scuffle really broke out. Remember, the anti-Sikh riots is the most painful chapter since independence. In fact, in the last 34 years, they've been waiting for justice. At least 3,000 Sikhs were brutally massacred in Delhi, on the streets of Delhi. And here is what Majinder Singh Sirsa of the Akali Dal said outside Patiala House Court.
आप 1984 में बेगुनाह लोगों को मारते हैं, कत्लेआम करते हैं। कोर्ट में आज भावनाएं देखें किस तरह की, जब बताया जा रहा था किस तरह से आग लगा के फर्स्ट फ्लोर से उनको ग्राउंड फ्लोर पर फेंका गया, और उसके बाद भी तुम्हारी गुंडागर्दी बंद होने का नाम नहीं ले रही। उसके बाद भी अभी भी तुम गुंडे बनकर घूम रहे हो, अभी भी तुम्हें लगता है कि तुम जो चाहोगे कर सकते हो। ऐसा नहीं हो सकता, देश में कोई कानून है।
Nalini, unofficial estimates say that 8,000 Sikhs were brutally massacred. The official figures are somewhere around 2,800. And here an Akali, the leader, is really clearly agitated. You know, the frustration is very much visible and obvious. One can understand the pain of the people. But could you again explain for the people who are just joining in and tuning in to Republic TV what happened at the Patiala House Court? Because we are playing repeatedly these visuals of Majinder Singh Sirsa upset, police trying to intervene, and the 84 convict has been beaten up.
In fact, it was yesterday that the court had pronounced his order for his conviction in regard to his relation in the 1984 riots. It was after that he was produced before the court today for his sentencing to happen on this particular issue. And we'd seen a lot of Sikh leaders, including Maninder Singh Sirsa, who were present in Patiala House Court as well to see what the sentence is going to be and for how long this particular convict is going to be convicted. And just immediately after the arguments and the sentencing were over, and when the convict was leaving court in front of the police presence, is when Maninder Singh Sirsa had in fact attacked him. He hit him with his hand, and that is when the police came into the picture. They tried to keep the Sikh leaders away from the convicts because there was a scuffle that finally broke out between the two parties right outside the courtroom in the Patiala House Court. So, of course, there is rising agitation amongst these Sikh leaders and, in fact, the entire Sikh community. And at the same time, they are now taking matters into their own hands to try and seek justice for the 1984 riot victims. Clearly.
All right, Nalini, please hold your thoughts because Mr. Majinder Singh Sirsa is now joining us on the phone line on this live broadcast. Sirsa साहब, Aditya this side. आप क्या कहेंगे, क्या हुआ था उस वक्त जिसमें आप बहुत इमोशनल हो गए? क्योंकि देखिए, जस्टिस तो नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन लॉ भी तो नहीं ले सकते अपने आप हाथ में।
हम ना 34 साल से हमने हाथ में कानून को नहीं लिया। हमने 34 साल तक इस जहर के घूंट को पिया है, और एक बार नहीं अनेक बार पिया है। जब हमें तंज कसे गए, हमें बेइज्जत किया गया, मैंने वो मंजर अपनी आंखों से देखा है जब मुझे अपनी जान बचानी पड़ी। पर आज जो अक्यूज कोर्ट में पेश किया जाए, वो अपने गुंडों के साथ आए और बाहर आके 34 साल बाद भी उनकी मानसिकता ना बदले और वो अपनी गुंडागर्दी के उनकी सोच ना बदले और ये कहीं 1984 फिर से याद करा दें कि भूल गए 1984 उनके परिवार के लोग कहें, तो स्वाभाविक है आप अपने संयम पे काबू नहीं रख सकते। आपका बांध, संयम का बांध टूट जाता है।
मैं समझ सकता हूं, लेकिन मजिंदर सिंह सिरसा साहब, आप मुझे ये बताएं, कौन है ये कन्विक्ट? इनको सजा तो हुई है बिल्कुल, लेकिन आप पुलिस को भी कंप्लेंट कर सकते थे। क्या आप एफआईआर करेंगे? क्या आप इसमें एक्शन पुलिस से मांगेंगे इंस्टेड ऑफ बीटिंग हिम हिमसेल्फ?
लेकिन एक बताएं, आप मुझे बताएं, हमने अपनी आंखों के सामने अपने परिवार जाते देखे हैं। मैंने अपनी जान को कैसे बचाया। मुझे मेरे एक टीचर ने, जो मैथ्स का टीचर था, चक्की में छुपाकर मुझे बचाया। क्या यार, अभी भी इनकी गुंडागर्दी नहीं बदलेगी? अभी भी इनकी मानसिकता और सोच नहीं बदलेगी? अभी भी इनको लगता है कि ये हमारे साथ जो चीज चाहे कर सकते हैं? ये मानसिकता कब तक इनकी रहेगी? अगर आप कोर्ट के आज प्रोसीडिंग्स देखते, विटनेस ने जिस तरह से बताया, जिन लोगों को इन्होंने जिंदा ऊपर से जलाकर उनको काट कर ऊपर से फेंका था, वो उनकी खुशकिस्मती की उनमें से एक बच जाता है। जिस तरीके
देखिए सिरसा साहब, बिल्कुल स्पष्ट सी बात है। देखिए, रिपब्लिक टीवी भी सांत्वना रखता है, रिपब्लिक टीवी भी कहता है जो हुआ बहुत गलत हुआ, सजा मिलनी चाहिए, चाहे कांग्रेस पार्टी के लोग हों, उनको सजा मिलनी चाहिए, बिल्कुल मिलनी चाहिए। लेकिन क्या कोर्ट के अंदर ऐसा कर सकते हैं? क्या ये जस्टिफाइड है कि आप कोर्ट जब प्रणाली है अपनी, वो कर रहा है अपना काम, कन्विक्ट कर रहा है, आप कंप्लेंट कर सकते थे जज से भी और पुलिस से भी। आपने अपने हाथ में क्यों लिया कानून?
उन्होंने की है, गुंडागर्दी उन्होंने की है, गुंडागर्दी उन्होंने शुरू की है, और उन्होंने जिस तरह के तंज कसे हैं, मुझे नहीं लगता कि कोई भी होगा वो बर्दाश्त कर पाएगा। कोई भी होगा वो बर्दाश्त नहीं कर पाएगा इस गुंडागर्दी को। आप ये तंज
नहीं, कोई दो राय नहीं है, कोई दो राय नहीं है, कोई बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकता, कोई गुंडागर्दी बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकता, लेकिन फिजिकली खुद तो इस कानून अपने हाथ में नहीं ले सकते, क्योंकि हमारी प्रणाली है, हमारे पास पुलिस है, हमारे पास कोर्ट है, और ये तो कोर्ट के अंदर हुआ। क्या आपको दुख नहीं होता? कोर्ट के अंदर तो एटलीस्ट नहीं होना चाहिए था ये।
जब बार बार आप नोचा जाता है, जब बार बार आपके जख्मों को कुरेदा जाता है, जब बार बार आपको ये जताया जाता है कि आप थर्ड रेटेड सिटीजन है, आपको कोई भी मार सकता है, कोई भी कर सकता है, और आज हमारी ये ताकत है आपको ऐसे करने की, तो फिर संयम आपके हाथ में रहेगा। मुझे नहीं लगता कि किसी के बस में रहता है।
सिरसा साहब, एक आखिरी सवाल मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूंगा कि हुआ क्या आप दर्शकों के लिए 2 मिनट के लिए आप बता दें कि जो ये गुंडे थे ये कर क्या रहे थे, ये कन्विक्ट कौन थे, इनको कौन शह दे रहा था, हुआ क्या जिससे आप प्रोवोक हुए? सिरसा साहब, क्या आप सुन पा रहे हैं मुझे? Well, we will be establishing this contact with Vajinder Singh Sirsa, but he says he got provoked because there were some goons that the convict had brought even after 34 years. Is it really justified to, in fact, resort to violence inside the courtroom when already there is a process on according to the justice delivery mechanism? Of course, one sympathizes and understands the long wait that the Sikh community in Delhi and elsewhere have to wait for the wheels of justice to move. Nalini Sharma, legal correspondent, waits. Will there be some kind of a police action? Of course, we saw in these visuals, Nalini, that the police is trying to intervene, calm down the emotions, but the accusation from Sirsa is there were some goons that were brought in. What are you hearing?
Well, Aditya, what we are picking up is that this is a scuffle that had broken out immediately after the arguments on the sentencing had happened. And they were extremely heated arguments that had happened inside the courtroom, where in fact the public prosecutor had gone to the extent of asking for a death sentence for both Naresh Rawat as well as Yashpal Singh, who are the two convicted that we are talking about, who were convicted yesterday in the 1984 riots case. So there were heated arguments. The public prosecutor wanted death penalty for them. And of course, their defending lawyer was also trying to defend this entire case, trying to get the minimum sentence possible. They've already been convicted. The question of conviction is no more before the court. The only question that remains is for how long are they going to be languishing in jail. So that's what the arguments were going on regarding. And the court, after hearing the arguments at length, had reserved the order, which is when these accused persons, Naresh Rawat as well as Yashpal Singh, were leaving from the courtroom and they were going outside under police custody when they were going to be taken back to police custody along with Delhi police officials. So that is when all of these Sikh leaders who were also present inside the court and interestingly have been present inside the court for all of the 1984 riot hearings, they were also present there, and it is probably because of the kind of heated arguments that took place and also the fact that it's seen a conviction in the 1984 riot case after waiting for multiple years. While we've also seen the cases of Sachin Kumar and Jagdish Titler being delayed for decades and decades, they finally saw a conviction. So it is in that agitation and that frame of mind that Maninder Singh Sirsa actually went ahead and attacked these two convicts. What he stated in his ride after this entire scuffle and incident had taken place inside the court premises is that it was his way of getting justice for the 1984 riot victims. But question remains that taking law into their own hands, and especially within the premises of the court, so much so that this is happening right outside the courtroom, is that really acceptable in the name of justice? And especially coming in from an Akali Dal leader, from somebody who represents a larger community, is this just going to agitate the community more? Is this going to lead other people to take law into their own hands and resort to violence just because they are agitated with the way the courts are functioning and because of the fact that the case has been languishing for several years and there's still no hope for justice for the 1984 riot victims?
All right, Nalini, bringing in this latest visuals from the Patiala House Court where, in fact, Akali Dal leader Vajinder Singh Sirsa resorted to some kind of heckling of the convict and beat him up inside the courtroom just a day after he was convicted for the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. And in fact, this is a story we'll be tracking very closely and we'll get you the latest on that as well. Thanks, Nalini, for joining us.